Hello, everybody. Welcome to our little demonstration on core democratic values. We're going to go over the notes on the things that create the foundation of our society or make our American democracy, our government, the way it should be. So these are just the fundamental beliefs and constitutional principles that will help unite all American citizens. And we see these things in famous American documents and speeches like the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, other things like the Gettysburg Address, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. These are really the ideals, the goals and the wants and expectations that kind of bind our country together. We want to live by these values to help guide us to become better people and form a better society. So starting off with the right to life. This is basically saying that a person has the right to live as they want to live, and that can't be violated without due process of the law, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But a good example are the first responders and military personnel that serve to protect you and keep you alive. They do what they do, they risk their lives, they put themselves in potential peril and hardship because they value your life and they want to make sure that everybody else around you in society is helping respect your right to life. We also see circumstances and consequences where a person's right to life can be taken away if they violate somebody else's. So with all these core democratic values, you are entitled to them as long as you are respecting the same rights for others. And if you don't, if somebody takes away somebody's right to life, they then have their right to life potentially taken away as well. But again, not without due process of the law. And a perfect example of the right to life is in our 13th Amendment, when Abraham Lincoln and the primarily Republican Congress decided to abolish slavery and put an end to slavery in this country, which helped ensure the right to life for not just white European descendant Americans, but African Americans and all others as well. The next one is liberty. So the core democratic value of liberty basically means that a person's personal, political, and economic freedom cannot be stepped on. A good synonym for liberty is the word freedom. So a good example would be in our First Amendment, the freedom of expression, which means that you have the right to say pretty much what you want. You have the right to act and dress pretty much any way you want. And you have the right to write things or express yourself in nonverbal communication the way that you want. As long, again, as we're not stepping on the rights of others, or we're not threatening others, or we're not breaking any of the, the local or federal laws in the actions that we are committing and the choices that we make. So another example of liberty is you have the right to vote for who you want. That would be an example of political freedom. Economic freedom simply means that you have the right to, or the freedom to start and or quit or change any job that you have access to. So it doesn't mean that you can be whatever you want, literally. If you want to get there, sure, you can strive to do what it is that it's going to take for you to get there. But in a more realistic sense, it means that your right to go after those avenues and to try and become whatever job you want to have or whatever career choice you want to make, you have access to that without the government stepping in and telling you right off the bat without good reason that no, you can't do that. The next one is pursuit of happiness. And you'll hear a lot of these three, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, strung together. It's in the Declaration of Independence. And sometimes you'll hear it referred to as life, liberty, and property. That's actually what Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration, was mentioning. But it was commonly accepted that the pursuit of happiness kind of goes along with your right to life and liberty. So liberty, the freedom to make the choices that you want, to live the life that you want, and obviously everybody wants to choose a life in a path that's going to make them happy. So pursuit of happiness is the idea that everyone can obtain happiness and live the life that you want as long as it does not step on the rights of others. So again, going back to liberty and life, you have the right to choose the career path that you want. You have the right to choose whatever hobbies you want to do. So if I want to watch college football all day on a Saturday, that's not illegal. That's not hurting anybody. I have the right to make that choice. Just like if somebody wants to spend hours playing video games, they have the right to make that choice as long as they're not hurting themselves or others. And of course, one thing to keep in mind, one common denominator, is that we're talking about adults. So basically people who are 18 or older. So students, if you're thinking, well, my parents say that I can't play video games all the time, or my parents say I can't have this certain haircut, I can't shave my head and look beautiful like Mr. Chapman, or as beautiful as Mr. Chapman. Just keep in mind that once you hit 18, then you legally have the opportunity to make those decisions on your own without interference from your parents. And again, we can't step on the rights of others. So if it's going to make you happy to play music really, really loud late into the evening, early into the morning, and other people are sleeping or have to work the next day, you can't violate any local nuisance ordinances or laws that are going to be breaking any laws. So again, as long as you're not breaking any local laws, you can pursue the happiness that you want to. The next one is justice. And so justice is essentially saying that everybody should be treated fairly in the distribution of benefits of society. So when the government is giving things to people who need it, it has to be distributed evenly. It can't just be for one group or a couple of groups. It can't just be for one gender or another. It has to be distributed equally in a fair manner. Government has to apply justice or fair distribution in the rules of law. So law has to apply to everybody, and that goes back to one of the principles of democracy, the rule of law, that the law has to apply to everybody fairly and equally, and nobody is above or below the law. And then also in public decision making. A good way to think about justice is it's getting what you deserve. So if you're doing good things should be dealt out to you. If you are doing things that are harmful or doing things that are bad for society, then you should expect consequences to correct those actions and to prevent anybody from doing the things that will harm society or that will harm others or infringe upon the rights of others. So if you're respecting others' rights, your rights will be respected as well. And that's something that our government and that law enforcement and that anybody who's in a position of authority needs to understand and dish out equally. So some good examples. Police must provide a search warrant to come into your home. This is an example of justice. Regardless of how many people might accuse a person or of wrongdoing, or regardless of how, quote unquote, guilty people say somebody might look, even if that person has partially confessed to something, justice means that everybody, regardless of their walk of life, regardless of their background, regardless of their current socioeconomic status, has the right to the fair distribution of the laws and the fair implementation of the laws. In other words, the law has to be carried out the right way. It can't be shortened or it can't be made tougher for certain groups of people. And we talked about this concept of due process. So within the confines of due process, it's spelled out in the 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendments in our U.S. Constitution or in the Bill of Rights. And these talk about getting the right to a fair trial, having the opportunity to call a lawyer to help you through that trial process, the opportunity to call witnesses to defend yourself and to speak on your behalf to try and prove your innocence. And then also, if a person is convicted, fair sentencing. So if somebody commits a petty crime, they cannot be given a grandiose, unfair punishment or sentence. So in other words, if somebody shoplifts, a video game that's worth $50 from a retail store, they can't be given life in prison for stealing something that was worth $50. The punishment has to fit the crime, and that's essentially what the 8th Amendment is saying. The next one is truth. So the idea of truth means that people demand that the government refrain from lying, and they also expect that the government disclose all important information to the public on an as-needed basis. So a good example is that police need to alert citizens of any dangerous activity going on in that area, maybe advising citizens to stay in their homes until further notice. Another good example would be severe weather alerts, or the knowledge of something potentially hazardous that might be coming, whether it's related to weather, whether it's related to politics, or certain groups who might be planning various activities. It's our society letting us know so we can make the right decision on how we want to proceed further with that. Another good example would be meat warnings. So if you look on any sort of meat package, it'll tell you that if you don't cook it properly, there's the chance of foodborne illness, or there's a chance you might get sick from it. We also see the same thing with Surgeon General's warnings on tobacco products and cigarettes. It talks about how common use of those products can potentially lead to health issues, especially if somebody is pregnant. It can lead to birth defects. And so decades in the past, that knowledge was not public knowledge. It was not relayed to people, and lawsuits came about because citizens felt that they were not properly informed. And so now, especially in a sue-happy, litigious society that we are in today, there's warning after warning just for the sake of letting people know, and then whatever decision they make based on that knowledge that they were presented, that's on them at that point. So it kind of helps alleviate some of the responsibility that that the government might have.